5 podcast, putting all the best spots in the city on the map, from the hidden gems and the most underrated to the top ranked and highly anticipated. We're the go-to pros for letting you know where to spend all your free time and your hard-earned dough. So enjoy the show, sit back and relax. It's a 215 podcast.
They are the bougie blue collar, Philly sports enthusiasts, small business supporting, self-proclaimed socialites of the 215. Your hosts, Burkhart and Alyssa.
Episode 9.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Spooky season is upon us. What was your favorite Halloween memory as a kid, Joe?
Mine's definitely getting home after the night and dumping out all the candy.
Yeah, like I would always do piles too, like the candy I liked, didn't like, and then suspicious.
We'd do the trades with the friends.
Okay.
Yeah, like if we knew someone liked a certain candy, we would trade off.
I think my favorite Halloween memory as a kid was like the getting ready. Like my mom is so good with the Halloween decor. Our house was always set. The candles were lit. My mom was waiting for me to get home. We had the wigs, the makeup, the costume unveiling.
So it was like the ambiance of it.
Yeah. And then you're right, like coming home, dumping the candy, seeing what you got, going through it.
Yeah. Didn't they make such a big deal of like something would be wrong with the candy?
Like really looking for razor blades in your candy bars and stuff.
That was a real concern, or at least they made it out to be.
They did. No, like if something was like ripped or like half open, like obviously you would throw it away.
Right.
But like as now that we're adults, like, and you really think about it, nobody's giving their drugs away.
Especially in inflationary times.
Yeah, like they are not wasting it on the kids. So yeah, I think that was always a real fear, like somebody might be drugging you, but yeah, thank God I've never
Trying to hurt you in
it.
some kind of way, yeah.
Yeah.
It is a concern. I mean, I guess if when you're a parent, you're probably thinking like the world's out to get your child, you know?
Yeah. But no, now it's like, I feel like things are changing as far as the Halloween traditions go. It's almost like trick-or-treating, maybe a dying tradition, because everybody does the trunk or treats.
And they do it on a different day than Halloween now.
Yeah, I think if it's like during the week, they might do it on the weekend before.
Yeah, which is different. When I was growing up, it was always on Halloween night, unless it rained or something. And we'd be out there at like 5 o'clock sharp.
Definitely 5 o'clock with the metallic bags that I don't know how we got them.
Oh, them metallic bags were official back in the day. I forgot about them.
They were so official. Everybody was like glowing in the dark with those neon bags. Maybe that's what it was for, so you didn't like get hit by a car.
Yeah, very visible.
Mm-hmm.
You were seen.
But they didn't hold up too much, so I feel like I always had like a pillowcase on me too.
Oh, you had a backup?
Well, that's another thing that's changed too over time. Like before, I feel like you wouldn't dare step out, even as a teenager, like not dressed in some type of outfit, where now I feel like a lot of teenagers still come out with just the hoodies on.
I don't know. My block always played like no mask, no candy.
Okay.
No costume, no candy. I should say that because not every costume requires a mask, but
That's a good way to do it, because now, like, again, I love when the little kids are out. I love seeing all the babies on the block. And then as the night turns, it's like the teens start coming out in their lack of costumes. And we know how I feel about the teens.
not taking my free candy.
But like, wear the costume. Don't half-ass it.
Yeah, no, I agree. All or nothing.
You know, Halloween, it's a night of opportunity. Let's get into our first spooky story. A crime of opportunity for sure.
That happened on Halloween night 35 years ago.
It was October 31st of 1989. And it was a mob hit at Dante and Luigi's on Halloween night.
And that was Nicky Scarfo Jr., correct?
Yes, Nicky Scarfo Jr., his father was the acting mob boss of the Philadelphia mob at the time. And apparently the shooter came in a Batman mask and a trick-or-treating bag and a MAC-10 gun and just went up to the table and shot him multiple times.
Yeah, and he was probably never caught. Well, we know he was never caught because it was never solved. But it just goes to show you that like Halloween is probably the perfect night to commit that type of crime. Not that it sounds like we're almost encouraging people to do it.
I know. We're not. We're just saying be aware. Always keep your head on a swivel. As we already know, as Philadelphians, we have no choice but to do so.
It's Halloween night, so figure he could have probably just been walking with the gun out and it not really been looked at.
But that was the perfect example of.
Yeah, you tell the police Batman did it. Looking for 20 Batmans out there that
Yeah.
night.
But like
Bring
a
them all in for questioning.
show us your mask. Um
Where were you on Halloween night?
But imagine being a patron at Dante and Luigi's that night and you think you're just sitting down for a Halloween dinner
Some
and
clams and linguine.
yeah, Nikki was waiting on his clams and linguine actually to be served to him when he was, chopping it up with two friends, drinking some red wine, and boom, Batman shows up at the table. 9 shots, 50 Cent style.
Oh, shot 9 times. And he survived like 50 Cent.
He did, and to the point where no vital organs were hit, and he didn't even need a blood transfusion. So I don't think that the shooter was trying to just
More of a
not kill
message, it
him.
seems.
Yeah, maybe more of a message. That shooting did mark the end of Nicky Scarfo Sr.'s run as the Philadelphia crime boss.
And that's the one thing. If you want to protect your family, you're going to, maybe step down from that position.
Yeah, and if you're the one wanting the power, you're gonna do anything to get it.
That too. It's crazy to think about. Nicky Scarborough Jr. was only 24 at the time.
And yeah, him just sipping that wine, waiting on his meal, like, I'm that guy, my dad's that guy, like, I'm holding it down for my family, and just on an unexpected moment.
Shot 9 times. Life flashes before your eyes. But he survived. He's still living to this day.
He was out 9 days later. As you said before, the attempted hit went unsolved. And they did have his hospital room on like lockdown. Only certain people were allowed in because they didn't know if the man was going to come and finish the job.
Yeah, he could have came back as like the Riddler or something. The Joker.
But yeah, just to think about that moment and like compare it to now, where now we do have to be conscious of everywhere we go. It's definitely something on my mind when I'm in big crowds, but just that restaurant setting, like how brazen was that?
That's kind of crazy if you think about it. Really, just to go in a restaurant and do it in front of all those people. And the kind of trust that no one in there has a gun to turn it back on him.
Yeah,
So it was gutsy.
definitely has some big cojones. But that's not the only mobster talk that we have to talk about today.
So another mob boss that came here and paid us a visit was Al Capone. He actually stayed at one of the most historical haunted places in Philadelphia, which was the Eastern State Penitentiary. He stayed there from 1929 to 1930. It was said that a ghost by the name of Jimmy, who was murdered by Capone in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. At night, Capone could be heard screaming his name, Jimmy, at the top of his lungs. So it's crazy how your demons follow you wherever you go.
Yeah. And it's crazy that eventually Capone ended up in a mental hospital because Jimmy had followed him through his life and drove him crazy,
Yeah.
essentially. I'm sure it was a little bit of the syphilis too, but Capone had like the most ballin' cell at the penitentiary. There was like paintings hanging in there, there was oil lamps, but it couldn't protect him from his demons. Like money can't buy, as we know, health, happiness, and sanity.
Protection from the other side.
Yeah, really. The penitentiary just holds so much paranormal activity because of what was originally thought to be a kind way of punishing. Like, the Quakers played such a role in our area, and they were the ones who thought of this type of punishment. They thought, isolation and quietness with your thoughts and building your relationship with God through reading the Bible every day would build you back to being a better person and reform you. But it ended up being complete torture. Like the prisoners were not allowed to speak at all out loud to themselves or to the guards or other inmates. The guards had velvet wrapped on their shoes so you couldn't hear them coming, so you were constantly being watched. And there was a lot of torture if you did talk, right?
Yeah, so if you did break the rules and you were caught speaking to other inmates, you would be punished, but the punishments were almost a form of torture.
The infirmary, like I can't imagine how many unnecessary procedures were done as a form of torture because that's a really haunted part of the prison. And that obviously wasn't what the Quakers had intended, but it just got taken to such a next level that it ended up being one of the most grueling prisons of our history
Yeah,
in our
just
country.
why it is a haunted attraction today.
At the time, it was such an investment, and it was comparable to like the White House in its building and cost.
Yeah, it
And
was the most expensive building of its time, and it had more amenities than the White House. It was so that prisoner had everything they needed to be in isolation.
one creepy thing that is known to remain as a haunting is the watchtower there. People have seen the watch guard up there, but the steps have deteriorated and there's no way to really get up there anymore.
But people are still walking by and seeing someone up there where there's no physical access to get to the top of that tower.
So crazy. So, one of the stories I heard, my friends, like I said, my friends that grew up there, their moms and aunts and uncles would like sneak into the prison yard and party in there back in the day. Well, one night they were all partying in there and they looked up and they saw the guard in the watchtower and they never went back.
Yeah, that's enough not to go back.
The prison officially closed in 1970 and reopened again in 1994 for tours. So that first year when they allowed visitors to come through as like a haunted attraction, this woman went and did a tour and she felt just like physical grabs the entire time. She wrote an article about it. Like she felt like ice cold at her ankles at one point, and she kept saying, "Oh, they have this thing really figured out with like the spooky, scary vibes." And at one point during the tour, she felt like somebody had almost like walked through her. Like she felt a jolt and an extreme like pain, like shoved into the wall. When she got home that night, she found that her chest was completely black and blue. She never looked at haunted buildings again the same. Like, and you think back then when they did it, the first couple tours, you're really opening yourself up to a direct potential experience with a ghost. I've done the tour a couple of times for Halloween, and I would put my phone on camera mode in the cell that I was walking through. So many orbs. So I definitely feel like there's a lot of energy there.
It's a place where a lot of just messed up things happen where if a soul did die there, I would expect them to stay there.
Yeah, especially like they died in imprisonment. They almost their soul was convinced they couldn't leave when you think about it. I
Just
know.
think of how angry too.
Yeah,
Like this place is supposed to help you repent and reform, and it end up killing you. I could see that soul want to take out some revenge.
absolutely. So Washington Square is haunted by many ghosts, as we have learned.
Why the area may be experiencing so much paranormal activity is because there was two separate times there was mass burials and unnamed graves. One being the Revolutionary War soldiers. They were just dumped in Washington Square Park and buried. And then a second time, when the yellow fever hit, there was a lot of people that were buried there then. A lot of people actually fled Philadelphia because of this yellow fever. So now when people do go to visit and they feel sick or whatever, they say it's because restless souls that were kind of just thrown there with no real burial.
I think they ended up making a memorial for some of the soldiers that kind of halted some paranormal activity. It was so many unnamed soldiers, just I think looking for credit.
Which didn't come until what, 1950 when they put that statue up?
Yeah,
So there was a lot of years between the revolution and 1950. You think about it, that was a good over 150 years of haunting.
I know. And when you think about like the heaviness that probably and the anguish that so many people felt and the fear of like dying of that disease and then just throwing those bodies into that park and kind of just running, you know what I mean? You imagine just like wanting to get rid of it because the disease was so toxic.
It was quite a time back in that day, and medicine's not like it is today. It was just run away from the disease or stay and try to fight it if you contracted it.
So there's a woman named Leah that haunts Washington Square Park. Leah is known to walk the park with a lantern and protect the grave sites from grave robbers and resurrectionists that would steal bodies and sell them on the black market to physicians needing cadavers. So her, along with the soldiers and the people that died from yellow fever, there's a lot of activity in that park.
Yeah, so if you're feeling any craziness around Washington Square Park, these are some good reasons you're probably feeling that.
Yeah. And on that same craziness vibe, we had the first bank, the first federal bank was built in Philadelphia in the 1700s, and Alexander Hamilton was a big pusher of this bank. There was some question of if the federal government should have a bank, but we needed it to start our economy here in America. So Alexander Hamilton has been known to haunt the bank because he believed in it so much. But others have said there's a darker reason. He had an affair with a woman that was married while he was also married with children. And once the woman's husband found out about the affair, he decided to blackmail Alexander Hamilton, who continued to like pay these quiet debts but couldn't really afford it. Later in life, he had arguments with other people, which led to him having a duel in New York City. He died doing the duel, and they say that he is ridden with guilt for leaving his wife with children and no money. So he is said to haunt the bank for more than one reason, maybe. So once the bank closed, 20 years later, a big shot in Philadelphia at the time, Stephen Girard, he bought the bank. And this just made him more and more wealthy. Forbes has said around this time he was worth $105 billion, which he helped fund like some of the wars in America. He played a big role here. But he also had a sad, dark story. His first wife is known to haunt the Philadelphia area. She was said to have suffered from mental illness, and while he was trying to help his wife, supposedly, he had sought the love and affection from a young woman and eventually had his wife, Mary, put into a mental institute around Penn's campus. She is known to haunt the area with her crying and her sadness. They eventually gave her a grave, so you may see Stephen Gerard's wife lurking. Something to keep an eye on.
Since we're talking about historical landmarks, Alfred's Alley is another one where it's supposedly haunted by the Hanged Man. It was a spy in the Revolutionary War and was allegedly hung in that alley, and he goes haunting the people that come visit.
Philadelphians have been living on that block since the 1600s. We know that Ben Franklin was a frequent visitor of that block, and the Junto boys for sure. So you gotta wonder if like they're still holding down their post as a good Philadelphia boy would.
Yeah,
Block
go to
captain.
have a beer with a few ghosts.
Yeah. So Stephen Gerrard also was on that block. So, that whole old city is really what it is. It's like,
Yeah,
it's
back to
old.
Stephen Gerrard. He's around a lot of haunted things in the city.
He is, and he was a big baller at the time. I mean, he was the rich man. He was like the Elon Musk of Philadelphia,
He's a
really.
somebody, yeah.
He was a somebody. But I wonder where Stephen Gerrard is, if he's on Alfred's Alley, if he's in the bank, if he's, just walking around Philadelphia admiring all of the things that his money funded. There's many notable places in Philadelphia that we haven't gotten into that have been noted to have a couple hauntings or two. City Tavern, which we would love to get back into and experience. They've been known to have a bride that may linger and a former waiter that was worked there in the 1700s. Apparently, you used to be able to get married there and have events, and the bride would pop up in the pictures. So, I would love to get in there.
Yeah, they're probably really lonely ghosts now because you can't even get in that place.
Just waiting.
But if you're around any of these places, your feelings may be valid when you feel some kind of paranormal activity going on.
Yeah, so keep your spidey senses going if you're walking in around Old City anytime soon.
And we'll catch you guys in the next one.
215 vibe.